Look at the face your dog makes when it wants something. The inner eyebrows lift, the eyes go wide and round, the head tilts just slightly. You've melted at that face 1,000 times. You melted the day you met him. That face is a lie, not a cruel one. The dog doesn't know it's lying. But it's a lie 33,000 years in the making, and it's the reason he's asleep on your bed and his ancestors are asleep in the ground. In 2019, a team at the University of Portsmouth did something most people would rather not think about. They dissected the faces of dogs and the faces of wolves and laid the muscles side by side. The dogs had a muscle the wolves didn't, a small one, above the eye. Its only job is to raise the inner eyebrow and make the eyes look bigger, sadder, younger, more like a human infant. Wolves don't have it, just a few stray fibers where the muscle should be. The dogs evolved it, or kept it while wolves lost it. The science argues about which. The science does not argue about what it does. It makes you want to take care of them. The researchers' conclusion was almost rude in how simple it was. The dogs that could make this face got fed. The ones that couldn't, didn't. You are looking at the winners of a 30,000-year competition, and the prize was your dinner table. And right now, that ancient little muscle is doing better business than at any point in human history. Because in America today, there are more dogs than there are children. 87 million dogs, 73 million kids. The golden retriever is winning, and it isn't close. Everybody thinks this is a story about loving animals. It's a story about an economy that quietly turned a child into a luxury and a dog into the affordable replacement. Let me show you how we got here, and why an industry worth $300 billion is delighted you feel this way. Start with the raw numbers, because they're stranger than any argument I could make. The American Veterinary Medical Association counted 87 million dogs in the United States in 2025. Add 76 million cats, and you're past 160 million animals living in people's homes as family. The number of human beings in this country under the age of 18 is around 73 million. There are more dogs in America than there are people too young to drive. This didn't happen overnight, and nobody announced it. In 2002, almost half of American households had a child living in them. 20 years later, that's dropped to 40% and falling. Over the same stretch, pet ownership climbed and climbed until it crossed 70%. Somewhere in the middle of those two lines, they crossed. The animal quietly became more common in the home than the child. No headline, no ceremony, just a slow national shrug. And the people driving it are the usual suspects, the same generation blamed for killing everything else. Millennials own the most pets. Gen Z is adopting them faster than anyone, 43% faster than just 2 years ago. A generation that supposedly can't afford a house, can't afford a wedding, and definitely can't afford a child, somehow found room in the budget for a French bulldog named Kevin, who has a raincoat, and an Instagram account with better engagement than yours. That's the part everyone gets wrong. They look at Kevin in his little raincoat and they see frivolity, a generation playing house with animals because they refuse to grow up. That's not what's happening. What's happening is math. Cold, rational, devastating math. And once I show you the numbers, you'll stop laughing at Kevin. You might even envy his owner. But before the math, you need to understand why this works on you, why the dog gets in. Because the dog doesn't just live in your house. It lives in the part of your brain you built for your children. In 2015, a Japanese researcher named Takefumi Nagasawa published a study in the journal Science. He measured oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the one that floods a new mother's brain the first time she holds her baby, in dogs and the people who owned them. When the dog and the human looked into each other's eyes, both of them got a spike. The same hormonal loop that runs between a mother and her infant ran between a person and a domesticated wolf. Nagasawa called it a self-perpetuating, oxytocin-mediated positive feedback loop. You call it, "Who's a good boy?" Same thing. His version got published. And there's a reason the dog wins this game so easily. It's been studying for it longer than you've been alive, longer than your whole species has been farming. There's a concept in biology called the baby schema. A scientist named Konrad Lorenz described it almost a century ago. Big eyes, round face, small nose, big forehead. Those features in that arrangement trigger an automatic involuntary wave of "protect this thing" in the adult human brain. It's why babies are cute. Cuteness isn't an accident, it's a survival system. The infants who looked like that got cared for. The ones who didn't, in a harder world, didn't make it. Now picture a French bulldog. Big eyes, round face, flat little nose, high domed forehead. We have spent 2 centuries breeding dogs to look more and more like human babies. The most popular breed in America right now is, functionally, a baby schema delivery device that also snores and cannot breathe properly, which we find adorable, which should tell you something about how deep this goes. So understand the machine you're up against. A muscle evolved to make a heart-melting face, a hormone loop hijacked from motherhood, a body deliberately bred to mimic an infant. The dog isn't manipulating you on purpose. The dog has no plan. The dog is just the final product of 30,000 years of a very simple filter. The ones that got into our hearts got fed. You never stood a chance. And honestly, neither did your grandmother. Now the math, the part that turns this from a cute story into an uncomfortable one. The most cited estimate for raising one child to the age of 18 in America, adjusted for today's prices, sits north of $300,000. That's before college, before the bigger house you suddenly need, before the career hours, usually the mothers, that quietly vanish and never come back. A dog, across its entire life, food, vet bills, insurance, the raincoat, runs you $20,000 to $30,000. So look honestly at the 2 options, the way a tired person at a kitchen table actually looks at them. One costs 10 times more, takes 18 years minimum, requires a partner or superhuman endurance. And in exchange, it hands you a lifetime contract of anxiety that doesn't expire when you do. The other costs 1/10 as much, loves you unconditionally inside a week, and never once asks why you didn't call. Someone on Reddit said it cleaner than any economist I've ever read. I spent $4,000 on my dog's surgery without thinking twice. I won't have a kid because daycare is $2,000 a month. Sit with that. The same person who'll empty their savings for a dog in a single afternoon has done the arithmetic on a child and quietly closed the spreadsheet. Not because they love the dog more, because the dog's worst day cost $4,000 once. The child's ordinary Tuesday costs $2,000 a month for 2 decades. The dog was an expense. The child was a mortgage with a personality. And here's the line I want you to actually hear. A dog is a child with a subscription model, one you can cancel emotionally far more cheaply. It never applies to college. It never sits on a therapist's couch listing your failures. And it dies, gently, on schedule, before it ever gets old enough to truly disappoint you. That's bleak, I know. It's also the exact calculation an entire generation has run, not with cruelty, but with a calculator. And I need to be very precise about something here, because this is where almost everyone telling this story goes wrong. The villain is not the woman who chose a dog. It is not the couple who decided one more human was one they couldn't afford. The villain is an economy that took the most ordinary thing a person can do, raise a child, and priced it like a yacht. People didn't stop wanting families. The family got expensive faster than almost anything else in modern life, and people, being rational, being human, found a cheaper way to meet the exact same need. That's not a moral collapse. That's a market doing what markets do. And someone, somewhere, was watching that market very closely. Because where there's 100 million people with a parental instinct and nowhere to spend it, there is, inevitably, a business. The pet industry in the United States this year is worth about $157 billion. Worldwide, it clears $300 billion. That's larger than the entire economy of most countries on Earth. And the growth isn't in dog food. Dog food is the boring old part. The money is in something the industry has a name for. They call it pet humanization. That is not my phrase. That is not an insult. That is the official internal term, the one in the investor decks and the market research reports, for the strategy of selling you things by treating your animal as a member of the family. There is a multi-billion-dollar industry with a formal vocabulary built on a single discovery. You will spend more, far more, if they can make you feel like a parent. And they were right. They even rewrote your language while you weren't looking. 20 years ago, you were a dog owner. Today, every ad, every vet, every brand on the shelf calls you a pet parent. That word was chosen, in a meeting, by people who understood exactly what they were doing. You don't buy organic, human-grade, grass-fed meals for something you own. You buy them for something you parent. There is dog food on shelves right now that costs more per kilo than the steak you ate last week. Your dog eats better than you do. And somewhere, deep down, you've made your peace with that. They didn't just sell you a dog. They gave you a promotion, from owner to parent. No paperwork, no labor, no 18-year wait. Pet insurance is the fastest growing corner of the whole industry. Fresh cooked meal delivery, daycare, hotels, therapists for dogs, DNA tests, Halloween costumes, which is a billion-dollar category by itself. Every single one of those products was lifted, almost unchanged, from the market for human children. The same playbook, the same premium, the same soft parental language. The industry didn't make you love your dog. Let's be fair. The biology did that 30,000 years ago with a muscle and a hormone. The industry just read the birth rate charts, saw a generation overflowing with love and locked out of the usual place to put it, and quietly moved the entire budget from diapers to premium kibble. They don't care who you love, they care what you spend. You didn't choose a dog instead of a child. The economy chose for you, and then sold you the dog at a premium. That's the whole story when you strip the fur off it. A caretaking instinct, 30,000 years old, runs headfirst into an economy that priced its natural target out of reach. The instinct doesn't quit. Instincts don't check your bank balance. It just looks around for the nearest thing it can afford to love. And there, waiting, with the right face, the right eyes, the borrowed hormones, and a little raincoat, was the dog. Let me tell you what this film isn't. It isn't me telling you to have children. That's not my business, and the honest data on whether kids make people happier is close to a coin flip anyway. And it absolutely isn't me telling you the love you feel for your dog is fake. It isn't fake. The oxytocin is real. The bond is real. The grief, when they go, and they always go first, is as real as any grief a human heart can hold. This was never a story about dogs. It's a story about a system that took something our species did for 200,000 years for free out of pure instinct and stapled a $300,000 price tag to it, and then acted surprised when people found a cheaper way to feel needed. The dog asleep on your lap is not the problem. The dog asleep on your lap might be the most honest relationship you have. The question worth losing sleep over isn't why do people choose dogs instead of children. The question is, who made the child so expensive that a wolf with the right face became the sensible choice? Follow that question far enough, and you won't end up angry at the woman with the French bulldog. You'll end up somewhere colder, somewhere with names on the door. Which, if you've made it this far, is exactly where you meant to go when you clicked. Go on, give the dog a treat. None of this was his idea. The rabbit hole.